Accio prop. It's not a real wand. In honor of the new Harry Potter movie coming out, we're gonna make a sweet prop from one of the old Harry Potter movies. There are a lot of tutorials out there for making wands and a few other Harry Potter props, but I wanted to make a big glowing one, so I chose the Triwizard Cup trophy. It looks like it's made out of crystal and pewter and probably a lot of magic, but we're muggles here, so we're just gonna use acrylic and foam and Worbla and see if we can make it work the old school way. It looks like it glows, and we're gonna fake that with some LEDs and aluminum foil. So the first step is to build a base. Since the cup is pretty big and it's gonna be made out of acrylic, it's gonna be heavy, it's really gonna need something sturdy to stand on. So I'm gonna make it out of MDF board and a little bit of craft foam. I've already mapped out about how big I want the cup to be, and the base is only a little bit bigger than that. I've already cut out a lot of them. I'm alternating between craft foam and MDF board so that it has a little step to it, but they're not all the same size. Once it's all glued together, I'm going to cut out a place for the battery to hide and for the LEDs to sit. So now I have my base built and cut out. I can make sure that the battery is going to fit. Success! And I'm just going to cover this. I'll probably put a piece of Velcro inside so that if I want to change the batteries, I can do that anytime I want to. And then I have a hole in the top, and this is where all the LEDs are going to sit. So the next step will be to line the inside of this with aluminum foil and put some LEDs in it. Now that we have an awesome glowing base, the next step is to make the stem. It's sort of slender and then tapers out. So what I did was made a mock-up out of foam and made sure it was about the height that I want and the width that I want at the bottom. And then all I'm gonna do is take a piece and cut it out of plastic. I tried out clear Worbla, but it doesn't stick to itself very well or make very rigid corners. So I don't think it's quite gonna work for this build. Instead, we're just gonna use PETG plastic, which is this. Now all we have to do is cut out a bunch of pieces, hot glue them together, and then fill it with resin. So here's the stem all put together. It's really important to make sure that all of the seams are sealed really, really tightly since we're gonna fill it with resin. A good way to test that is just to fill it with water and see if any leaks out. Luckily, it looks like this one passed the water test. If it didn't and we poured resin in it, you might end up with this kind of monstrosity, which just leaks and gets everywhere and looks like some sort of horrible thing that came out of a bogart. It's, yeah, we don't want this, but we do want this. Yeah. So now that my base is made and attached, I can go ahead and fill the stem with resin. Mine is a 1-to-1 ratio mixture, but there are a lot of others that have a really small amount of catalyst. Just make sure that you read your box and you mix it properly. So while the base is drying, we're gonna go ahead and focus on the cup itself. The top of the cup is the widest point, so I've made that with this hexagon shape right here. It's about 10 inches across, so each side is gonna be 5 inches. And I've made the sides right here. We're gonna have 6 of those, and they taper so that the cup will also have a slight taper to it, and we'll heat the form once we've cut it out of acrylic. The cup is gonna be made out of acrylic, so each of these sides are gonna be traced and cut, and we'll heat it later to make that nice cup shape. So satisfying. The cup says Triwizard on the side of it, so we want to be sure to engrave that first before we shape it or glue it together. And I'm going to practice engraving it on a scrap piece of acrylic first. Once we have all the pieces of the cup, we can go ahead and line them up in the nice hexagon shape to glue them all together. Now that all of our pieces are in place, the next step before gluing is to heat form it and get that nice cup shape at the bottom. I've already formed my other 5 pieces, so I just have this one left to go. Our acrylic is really thick, so it's going to take a lot of heat in order to get it to bend at all, which means it's going to be way too hot to touch, and I'll need to protect my hand with a super fashionable heat glove. So now my cup is completely assembled, and I'm going to add a little bit of strength to the brim before attaching it to the stem, and I'm just going to use pieces of Worbla to do that. Now I've made a piece to fill in the gap between the bottom of my cup and the stem. All I did was taped off the bottom, traced exactly the shape that I needed, cut it out of foam, and I'm going to glue it in place with epoxy. In theory. So the cup has a sort of pointy pattern on the bottom with a few diamond cutouts. I'm just gonna tape it off and draw it right on and have a pattern that fits perfectly. So now the next step is to build the 3 handles of our trophy. I started with this shape, which is just made out of foam. I'm going to wrap it in Worbla and then put a nice dragon head on it, which I've sculpted with a Dremel tool out of foam. And then I'm going to cover it in Worbla, sculpt some details into it, and attach them onto the cup. It's going to be pretty difficult, but I think I can handle it. So I'll show you how I did it. So now the next step before we attach the handles is to place the cup on our stem. Now that the resin has set, we can go ahead and try and shove it on there. So now that we have the lights installed, I can go ahead and attach my dragon handles. Then all we'll have left to do is the dragon at the bottom, the tree in the front, and a bunch of little details here and there around the stem and the brim. So now our cup is all painted and it's looking a little too clean for a centuries-old Triwizard tournament cup. So we're gonna go in with a little bit of black paint and some black rub and buff and try and make it a little more antique looking. We finished our Triwizard trophy. It looks pretty cool. It glows through magic and not LEDs at all. It's made with amazing spells and definitely not Worbla that's engraved or acrylic that's carved. It's magic, guys. Yeah. There are a lot of crazy techniques that went into it, so if you're not a Harry Potter fan, you can still make a really cool goblet out of these same acrylic engraving and Worbla decorating techniques that I showed you here today. If you have any suggestions for what you'd like to see us build next, just let us know in the comments, or you can email us at DIYpropshop@break.com. Until next time, I'm Hendo, and I'm going to spend my spare time filling this up with wine. It's fine. We're just drinking. Just a few dragons hanging out, drinking.